Chapter 1. The Handoff. The thing about working daytime operations at a vampire estate was that you got to see everything the owners never had. Theda Voss had been standing in the south garden of Ashcombe Hall for 11 minutes, staring at a crack in the exterior wall that ran from the second-floor window to the foundation, when Corwin appeared behind her with pruning shears and an expression of deep personal investment. "It's been there since 1843, Corwin said. He was 19, give or take the Napoleonic Wars. Nobody's noticed because nobody's been outside during daylight in, well, ever." "It's structural," Theda said. "Is that bad?" "It's not a compliment." Corwin considered this. "Should I tell him?" "I'll tell him. That's my job. You tell him about his roses." "His roses are excellent." "His roses are your roses. You've been tending them for 200 years. He just signs the fertilizer budget." "He signs it with great respect." Theda liked Corwin. She liked most of the staff at Ashcombe Hall, a discovery that had surprised her, given that roughly 60% of them were undead. The vampire-human integration reforms of 2019 had opened up a category of employment that hadn't existed before: daytime estate operations. Someone had to manage the contractors who could only work in sunlight. Someone had to supervise the structural assessments that required UV analysis. Someone had to accept the Amazon deliveries, negotiate with the council planning office about listed building permissions, and explain to the gas company inspector that yes, the boiler was in the basement, and no, the basement was not accessible between sunset and sunrise for reasons she was not at liberty to discuss. That someone was Theda. She'd done 6 estates in 4 years. A Georgian townhouse in Bath, where the vampire owner had never seen his own front door in natural light and was distressed to learn it was green. A manor in Suffolk, where the entire south wing had been slowly collapsing for 40 years because no one had been awake to notice the subsidence. A converted warehouse in Shoreditch, where the daytime security system was, quote, an elderly cat named Bernard. Bernard was effective, the vampire owner had insisted. Bernard was asleep, Theda had said, for most of his career. His security log consisted of napping in a sunbeam and occasionally attacking a curtain. He was a deterrent. He was a cat, Marcus. He was an elderly cat with a thyroid condition. The only thing he deterred was his own dignity. She was good at her job. She was also, and this was the part that made her good at her job, funny. Not performatively, not stand-up. The dry, sarcastic, observational kind of funny that made contractors trust her, made vampire staff relax around her, and made Birch, Ashcombe Hall's kitchen manager, laugh so hard during their first meeting that she nearly dropped a tray of blood bags. "You're telling me the inventory system is organized by vintage?" Theda had said, staring at the feeding room shelves. "It's a cellar," Birch said. "What else would you organize by?" "Expiration date? Blood type? Literally any system that doesn't treat human blood like a 2003 Bordeaux?" The 2003 Bordeaux was excellent, for the record. "I'm going to reorganize this." "You're going to try." By week 2, she'd reorganized it. Birch had conceded with grace. Aldous, the elderly steward who had been managing the household for 3 centuries, had conceded with the rigid courtesy of a man writing your name in a ledger titled Offenses. The previous system was adequate, Aldous said, watching her relabel the shelves. The previous system filed O negative under vintage. It is a classic. It's a blood type, Aldous. It doesn't have terroir. Everything has terroir if you're paying attention. She looked at him, 500 years old, impeccably dressed, holding a quill he had sharpened with the intensity of a man performing surgery. He was, she decided, the most dramatic person she had ever met, and she had once worked for a vineyard owner who wept at sunsets. "I like you, Aldous," she said. "That is not reciprocated." "It will be. Give it 3 weeks." "I have given things 3 centuries, 3 weeks is insulting. Fair, give it 3 months. Adequate. Corwin had reorganized his rose grafting schedule to align with her daytime inspection rounds, so he could, in his words, provide horticultural context. Irving, the king's personal aide, had watched all of this with the expression of a man who had once believed things would improve and had since revised his position comprehensively. She made Aldous say adequate, Irving reported to Soren on the second evening. This has not happened since 1978. What happened in 1978? A new brand of ink arrived that met his viscosity requirements. He said adequate. The ink was subsequently discontinued. He has not recovered. And Ms. Voss achieved the same response? Ms. Voss achieved the response by insulting his quill technique and then telling him she liked him. In that order. It was, Irving paused, efficient. Theta was sarcastic with all of them. Gently, warmly, with a specific calibration of someone who understood that humor was trust, and trust was everything when you were the only human on a staff of immortals. With one exception. Ms. Voss. The voice came from the study doorway at sunset, the handoff hour, when her shift ended and his world began. They overlapped for approximately 30 minutes each evening, during which she delivered the day's report and he received it. She turned. Her face changed. Not dramatically, not visibly to someone who hadn't been watching. But Soren Ashcombe had been watching for 14 days, and he had catalogued the change with the precision of someone who had 8 centuries to refine his observational skills, and nothing better to do with them. The warmth left. The humor drained. The sarcasm, the easy conspiratorial wit she gave to every other creature in this house, vanished like a door closing. What remained was professional, competent, polished, and absolutely, rigidly controlled. Good evening, Mr. Ashcombe. Good evening. He stood in the doorway. He was aware that he stood in doorways in a particular way, still, composed, filling the frame with the quiet authority of someone who had owned this house since it was a field and a prayer. The south wall has a structural crack, she said, running from the second-floor window to the foundation. It's been there since approximately 1843. I've scheduled a surveyor for Thursday. Thank you. The gas inspector came at 2. The boiler is compliant. He asked about the basement. I told him it was inaccessible due to ongoing renovation. The renovation we have been conducting since 1987. The very one. Is the inspector suspicious? The inspector is 63 years old, Mr. Ashcombe. He's not suspicious. He's tired. A pause. Not a comfortable pause. Pauses with Theta Voss were never comfortable, not for him. He could hear her heart rate, and it was elevated. Not the thundering of someone in danger. The steady, controlled elevation of someone managing a very specific kind of dread. Ms. Voss? Sir? You called Corwin Cor this morning. I heard you from the study. Corwin and I have a professional rapport. You told Birch her blood bag filing system was, and I quote, an affront to modern logistics and a personal insult to the concept of alphabetical order. It was. You told Aldous, who has not voluntarily laughed since the reign of George III, that his quill sharpening technique was the most dramatic thing she'd ever seen, and she'd once watched a man cry over a boiler. Aldous has a very specific relationship with his quill. You are warm and funny and conspiratorial with every person in this household. You are none of those things with me. The room was quiet. The sunset was pressing copper through the tall windows, and Soren stood in the last edge of shadow the way he always did at this hour, just outside the light, not quite touching it. You're my employer, she said. Aldous is also your colleague. You made him laugh. Aldous is different. How? She pressed her thumbs together in her lap. A small gesture. He'd seen it before. Every time he entered a room, every handoff, every report delivery. Thumbs pressed together, hard, like she was holding something in place. Will that be all, Mr. Ashcombe? Yes, he said. That will be all. She left. 47 seconds. He'd timed it. In the corridor, Irving was waiting, with the evening's correspondence and a facial expression that suggested he had been listening and was not surprised by anything he'd heard. She doesn't like me, Soren said. She is afraid of you, sir. There is a distinction. She's not afraid of vampires. She made Bernard the security cat jokes to Birch. She calls the ghoul sweetheart. She is afraid of you, specifically. This is, I agree, confusing. I am the king. Yes. People are usually afraid of me because I am the king. She is afraid of me despite being entirely comfortable with every other vampire she has ever met. Irving considered this with the careful neutrality of someone who kept a personal log specifically for moments like these. Have you considered that you might be, in some specific and non-royal way, frightening? In what way? I couldn't say, sir. I merely observe that Corwin fidgets, Birch bustles, Aldous fusses, and the ghoul scratches at things. You sit in a room, and you do not move, and you do not breathe, and you do not blink. And after about 4 minutes, the humans, the ones who notice, begin to feel observed. I am observing. Yes, that is the problem. Chapter 2. The Project. The fidgeting began on a Wednesday, and Irving documented it the way he documented everything, thoroughly, without hope, and in complete sentences. Week 1. The king has implemented a 2-finger tap on the left hand. Rhythm, mechanical. Frequency, intermittent. Observation. Resembles a telegraph operator attempting to transmit the word help. Ms. Voss asked if he was all right. He said he was fine. She did not appear convinced. Neither am I. Theda found the report in her correspondence tray on Friday, filed under Ongoing Concerns. She read it twice. Then she went to find Irving. He's tapping, she said. He is. On purpose. He has never tapped anything in 800 years. The purposefulness is, I think, self-evident. Why? Irving looked at her with the expression of a man who had once believed the world's problems could be solved with adequate documentation and had since adjusted his expectations downward. He would like to be less frightening to you. He's not, Ms. Voss. You leave every room he enters in under a minute. He has been timing it. He has asked me to help him. Irving paused, as if the next word caused him physical discomfort. Fidget. You're teaching the Vampire King to fidget? I am advising him on the project. The project is not going well. It was not going well. She was in the morning room, reviewing the structural surveyor's report, when Soren appeared in the doorway. Her shoulders went up. Her smile, she'd been laughing at something Corwin had said, disappeared. Good morning, Ms. Voss. Good morning, Mr. Ashcombe. He sat in the chair across from her, and then he did something she had never seen him do. He tapped 2 fingers on the arm of the chair. Tap, tap, tap. It was the most deliberate, mechanical, profoundly unnatural tapping she had ever witnessed. It had the organic quality of a metronome designed by someone who had never heard music. You're tapping, she said. People tap. People tap naturally. You're tapping like you're sending a distress signal. Something shifted behind his eyes. I was not aware there was a wrong way to tap. She stared at him. Her shoulders were still up, but somewhere underneath the tension, something else was surfacing. Something she recognized, reluctantly, as the same impulse that made her tell Aldous his quill technique was dramatic. It's terrible, she said. I am aware. Who taught you this? Irving provided guidance. Irving should be arrested. From the corridor, very faintly, I anticipated that response. She almost laughed. Almost. She could feel it in her chest, the same sarcastic warmth she gave everyone else, pressing against the wall she'd built specifically for this man. And she swallowed it and looked back at the surveyor's report. The crack in the south wall is deeper than expected, she said. The surveyor recommends scaffolding during daylight hours. Obviously, during daylight hours, you can't scaffold in the dark. I have scaffolded in the dark. In 1796, it went poorly. She looked up. You scaffolded your own house? I was young. I was enthusiastic. Irving advised against it. Irving advised against it in 1796? Irving has advised against most things since approximately 1680. He has been correct more often than I am comfortable acknowledging. This time the almost laugh made it to her mouth, a twitch, a crack in the professional composure. His eyes, amber, clear, focused, tracked it with the intensity of a man who had just seen something rare and was trying not to startle it away. She left. 63 seconds. Improvement. The next morning, she found Irving in the kitchen corridor, reviewing a document that appeared to be a furniture damage report. The bookshelf in the study, Irving said, not looking up. The king leaned against it yesterday evening during your handoff. I remember. He was trying to look casual. He succeeded in looking like a man who had been instructed to look casual by someone who had never seen a casual person. The bookshelf has been displaced by approximately 2 inches. The books on the third shelf fell. 3 of them are first editions. Is he going to try it again? He has informed me that leaning is an important human behavior. I have informed him that humans who lean typically weigh less than a vampire king with 8 centuries of bone density. We are at an impasse. Tell him to lean on something structural, a wall, a door frame. I will suggest the door frame, although I note that door frames are, in your case, the stated location of the problem. She looked at him. That was a joke. It was an observation. If it functioned as a joke, I will note it in the log as an unexpected development. The fidgeting escalated. He blinked. Not his usual rate, which Theta had privately calculated at roughly once every 45 seconds, about a third of human normal, but a new, deliberate, approximately every 3 seconds blink that made him look like he was receiving intermittent electrical shocks. You're blinking, she told him in the hallway, where she'd been explaining to a contractor that the East Wing was off limits due to light sensitivity, and the contractor had said, like a migraine? And she'd said, sure, like a migraine. I am practicing. You look like you're having a medical event. That is not the intended effect. What is the intended effect? Approachability. You look like you're being tasered. That is not approachable. He shifted in chairs. This was worse. Vampires didn't shift. They chose a position and maintained it with the architectural commitment of load-bearing walls. When Soren shifted, he moved his entire body 3 inches to the left with the smooth, total commitment movement of a chess piece being relocated, and then he was still again in the new position, as if he had always been there. That's not shifting, she told him during a Thursday handoff. That's relocating. What is the difference? She moved in her own chair, a small, restless adjustment. Like that, small, unconscious. I think about everything. I've noticed. She stayed for 4 minutes that time. Irving added it to the log. Week 3. The king attempted to cross his legs during the Tuesday handoff. His knee struck the table. The table moved 6 inches. Ms. Voss asked if the table had offended him. This is the first joke she has directed at the king. I am noting this as a significant development and adjusting my projections accordingly. Week 4. The king attempted a yawn. The yawn was, by any human standard, horrifying. Vampires do not yawn. The king opened his mouth at an angle that suggested either a jaw dislocation or an attempt to consume the air in the room. Ms. Voss said nothing. She did, however, grip her pen hard enough to leave an impression in the wood. I am classifying the yawn experiment as discontinued. The yawn, Theda told Birch in the kitchen. I need to talk about the yawn. Birch set down a tray of blood temperature-controlled glasses. I heard about the yawn. It was, Birch? It was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And I once watched a Victorian drainage pipe burst at a Grade 2 listed building. Was it worse than the blinking? The blinking was merely unsettling. The yawn was... He opened his mouth, Birch. He opened his mouth and I saw every single tooth he has, and some I don't think he knew about. He was trying to seem relaxed. He seemed like he was about to unhinge his jaw and consume a deer. He doesn't eat deer. I know he doesn't eat deer. I manage his blood inventory. I know exactly what he eats and how much and when. That's not the point. What is the point? Theda looked at her cup. The point is, he tried. He saw a YouTube video about human body language, and he tried to yawn, Birch. In 800 years, he has never needed to yawn. He did it because I'm afraid of his stillness. And he thought if he could do one more human thing. She trailed off. You're upset, Birch said. I'm not upset. You're upset that his terrible yawn made you feel something. I'm upset that I manage a blood inventory for a man who watches YouTube tutorials about yawning. That is an objectively upsetting situation. Birch looked at her with the calm patience of someone who had been managing kitchens and emotional crises in equal measure for 200 years. He's not doing it for YouTube, Theda. I know. He's doing it for you. I know. Chapter 3. The Reason. The crack in the south wall turned out to be the least of it. The whole south facade is compromised, Theda told Birch over tea in the kitchen. It was 3 p.m, deep in Theda's working hours, the part of the day that belonged entirely to her. 200 years of freeze-thaw cycles that nobody saw because nobody was awake to see them. To be fair, Birch said, we were all very busy being dead during the day. You're not dead, you're undead. There's a distinction. The distinction is mostly administrative. The distinction is that dead people don't have opinions about blood bag organization. You have strong opinions about blood bag organization. My opinions are correct. Your opinions are passionate. Correctness is a separate metric. This was Theda. This was who she was when the sun was up and the vampire king was in whatever interior room he retreated to during the hours he couldn't leave. She was sharp. She was warm. She made Birch laugh and Corwin blush, and Aldous look mildly homicidal in a way that everyone recognized as affection. The sunset handoff changed her. It happened at 6:14 that evening in the study. She was delivering the structural report, the south wall, the scaffolding schedule, the contractor's timeline, and he was listening with the focused attention he brought to everything, and she was maintaining the professional composure she brought to him specifically. And then he said, I have never seen the south wall in daylight. She stopped. What? I have owned this house for 800 years. I have never seen it in sunlight. You are describing something I have never looked at. It's your house. It is my house in the dark. You are showing me my house in the light. They are, I am learning, not the same building. She looked at him. He was sitting in his chair with the usual stillness, the new, slightly modified stillness that included a 3-finger tap every few minutes and an occasional blink, and he was looking at her with an expression she couldn't name. Not composed, not managed, something underneath. The front door is green, she said. What? Your front door. It's green, in daylight. A sort of sage green that's faded in the sun. I don't know what color it is at night. It is black at night, or dark. I have never considered it specifically. It's green. It's actually quite beautiful. The paint is original, at least a century old. It's worn in places where people's hands have pushed it open. Whose hands? Yours, I'd imagine, and a few hundred years of staff, and visitors, and, based on the height of the wear marks, at least one very determined child. He was quiet. The tapping had stopped. He was looking at her the way a man who has lived in the dark looks at someone describing color, carefully, hungrily, with the focused attention of a person trying to hold something they cannot touch. "Tell me more," he said. "About the door?" "About the house, in daylight." The library at noon. The sunbeams pick up every particle. The air looks like it's full of gold, tiny gold, floating gold, and the book spines that look black at night are actually dark green. The ones you think are brown are this deep, warm red. I have been reading the wrong-colored books for 3 centuries. You've been reading them in the dark. That's not wrong, it's just partial. What about the kitchen? Warmest room in the house at midday. The flagstones hold the heat. Birch keeps herbs on the windowsill, and when the sun hits them, the whole room smells like, I don't know how to describe it. Green. Alive. The opposite of night. I don't mean that as an insult. I know what you mean. He paused. What else? The staircase. The stained glass throws colored light across the stone steps. Blue at 10, gold at noon, red by 3. It moves with the hours, like the house is breathing. And the roof? You know about the roof? Corwin mentioned you went up there. I needed to inspect the chimneys. The east chimney has jackdaws, by the way. 3 of them. They've been there at least 2 years. I have jackdaws. You have jackdaws. You also have a view from the roof that you've never seen. It's the kind of view that makes you understand why someone built a house here in the first place. He was looking at her the way a man standing at a window looks at someone describing the world on the other side, carefully, with the hunger of someone who understands the concept but has never experienced it firsthand. I would like to see it, he said. The view? Any of it, all of it. You can't. The sun would kill you. That's literally why I'm here. I know. He paused. The composure held, but she could see something straining underneath it. That is both the practical reality and, I am discovering, the metaphor. She blinked. That might be the most romantic thing anyone has ever said to me about building maintenance. Is it romantic? I meant it as structural analysis. It can be both. Can it? Most things can be both. The crack in your south wall is a structural failure and a record of 200 years of this house standing up to things. The sundial is broken and optimistic. Your front door is green and... She stopped herself. And what? And the most beautiful door I've ever seen. But that's unprofessional. I will not report it. You're my employer. I am your employer. I am also a man who has never seen his own front door in daylight. If you tell me it's beautiful, I will believe you. I have no evidence to the contrary. She almost stayed longer. She could feel it, the pull toward one more description, one more color, one more room she could give him that he'd never seen. But her hand was close to his on the arm of the chair, and the closeness made her chest tight, and she stood up too quickly, and her hand brushed his, cold skin, sudden, the shock of touching something that registered as wrong to every mammalian instinct she had, and she pulled back. Theta, he said. It was the first time he'd used her name. Don't. Please don't. She left. 31 seconds. He found her in the garden the next morning, early, barely dawn, the sky the color of a bruise healing. He was standing at the edge of the shadow cast by the east wing, as close to the light as he could get without burning. "You shouldn't be out here," she said. "I have approximately 4 minutes before the sun clears the roofline. Then you have approximately 4 minutes to tell me why you're standing in my garden at dawn." "It is my garden." "It's my garden between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. We have a schedule." "I would like to understand," he said, "why your hand on my arm terrified you more than the crack in my south wall." She looked at him, at the tall, still figure standing in the last safe shadow of his own house, and she thought about her father standing in the doorway of every room she'd ever tried to feel safe in. "My father," she said. He waited. He was a very quiet man, controlled, still. He didn't shout, he didn't hit. He sat in a room and watched you, and you wouldn't know what he was thinking, and the not knowing was the whole thing. His silence felt like judgment. His composure felt like a test you were always failing. She pressed her thumbs together. "You sit the way he sat. You watch the way he watched. You have this composure that makes the air feel heavy, and I know you're not him. You're an 800-year-old vampire, not a retired systems analyst from Cheltenham. But my nervous system doesn't know the difference. It sees you and it says, 'Be careful, be perfect, he's watching.'" The shadow was shrinking. The sun was creeping toward his feet. "A systems analyst," he said, very quietly. He did tax systems for the county council. "I am being compared to a county council tax analyst?" "You asked." "I did." He looked at the light approaching his shoes. "I need to go inside." "You have about 90 seconds. Then I will use them to say this. I have been a king for 800 years. I have frightened diplomats and armies and creatures older than this country. I have never before been frightening because I resemble a man who did tax systems." Are you offended?" "I am," he paused. The composure was holding, but she could see the effort, a tension at his jaw, a ghost memory of a pulse at his temple that wasn't there. "I am trying to understand that the worst thing about me is not my teeth." The sun touched the edge of his shadow. He stepped back into the house, and the door closed between them. The green door she described to him, worn where hands had pushed it open for centuries. And she stood in the garden in the new daylight and pressed her thumbs together and thought. He came outside, at dawn, for 90 seconds. Nobody asked him to. Chapter 4. The Switch. Over the next 3 weeks, Theda did something she had never done at any of her previous 6 estates. She started staying past sunset. Not long at first, 40 minutes, then an hour, then on one memorable Thursday, 90 minutes, during which she described the attic rooms in such detail that Irving appeared in the doorway to ask if the handoff had become a tenancy. "She's describing the furniture," Soren said. "She has been describing furniture for an hour and 12 minutes. I merely wanted to confirm that this was deliberate and not a hostage situation." "It is deliberate. Please go away." I anticipated that response. Irving left. The handoff had become something else. Not a report delivery, not a meeting. Something that didn't have a name, but involved Theda sitting in the study chair with her legs tucked under her, describing the daytime version of a house that Soren had owned for 8 centuries and never fully seen. And Soren sitting across from her with his terrible 3-finger tap and his improving but still alarming blink rate, asking questions about sunlight. "The contractors found a sundial," she said one evening. "Where?" "Under the ivy on the south terrace. It's been there since, I'd guess the 1780s, based on the stonework. It still works. I set it at noon. It was 3 minutes fast." "A sundial cannot be fast." "This one is. I think it's optimistic." "You have attributed personality to a sundial." "I've been attributing personality to a clock that disagrees with strangers since my first week." The sundial is the least of my problems. She told Corwin about the conversations. She told Birch. She told Aldous, who received the information with the rigid neutrality of a man declining to have feelings about it. He's different during the handoffs now, she told Irving, standing in the kitchen corridor at 8 p.m., 2 hours past her usual departure. He taps, he blinks. He tried to lean casually against a bookshelf last week. I am aware, the bookshelf sustained minor structural damage. He's trying to be a person, Irving. He is a person, Ms. Voss. He is a person who has spent 8 centuries learning to be a very still one. The unlearning is, Irving paused, architecturally significant. She told Birch. Birch listened while filleting something Theda chose not to identify. He almost smiled yesterday, Theda said, during the handoff. I told him his front door was beautiful, and he almost smiled. Almost? Something happened at the corner of his mouth, like the muscles remembered how to do it, but hadn't been briefed. He smiles at Irving sometimes. Does he? It's very small. Irving says it's the most alarming expression in his repertoire. He says the last time the king smiled fully was in 1847, and it caused a diplomatic incident. What happened in 1847? I don't know. Irving refuses to discuss it. He says the documentation is sealed. Irving has sealed documentation? Irving has a filing system that would make Aldous weep. Aldous does not know about Irving's filing system. If Aldous found out, I believe it would be the end of something. She was staying. She was talking. She was being, slowly, crack by crack, like the south wall she was here to fix, herself. The sarcasm bled through. The warmth bled through. She called his blinking an optometric emergency. She described his chair shifting as tectonic. She told him his doorbell technique was improving, and he said, "How would you characterize it?" And she said, "Previously murderous, currently startling." And he almost smiled, and she almost stayed. She was, Irving noted with the precision of a man who had seen this before and knew how it ended, falling in love with the trying. And then, on a Thursday evening, it broke. She was in the kitchen with Birch and Corwin. The sunset handoff was approaching, and she was telling Corwin about the squirrel situation in the rose garden. 3 of them, she was saying, organized, military formation. I think the original one has been recruiting. Corwin's face was a study in horticultural outrage. They're after the damask cuttings. They're after world domination core. The damask cuttings are just phase 1. What's phase 2? The herb garden, then the orchard, then, presumably, the sundial. Nothing is safe. Birch was laughing. Corwin was planning a counteroffensive involving chicken wire and what he called strategic intimidation. Theda was mid-sentence, mid-laugh, warm and sharp and exactly herself, when Soren walked in. Not into the kitchen, into the doorway. And Theda stopped. Mid-sentence, mid-laugh. The warmth drained from her face. Her shoulders went up. Her hands went to her lap. Her thumbs pressed together. The kitchen went quiet. She'd done it 100 times. He'd seen it 100 times. But he'd always arrived to find Ms. Voss already in place, the professional version, composed and competent. He'd never seen the live transition. The moment where Theda became Ms. Voss, the switch. She watched him register it, the flicker behind the amber eyes, the jaw tightening, the hands that had been mid-tap going still. Not the practiced stillness, not the fidget effort, the old stillness, the real one. I apologize, he said. I did not mean to interrupt. You're not interrupting. It's handoff time. I can... You were laughing. 30 seconds ago, you were laughing. You were telling Corwin about squirrels and you were laughing. And I walked in and you stopped. You stopped being yourself, in front of me, the way you have been stopping for 7 weeks. Soren, I have tapped, I have blinked, I have shifted and yawned and crossed my legs and broken a table and leaned against a bookshelf that will never be the same. I have done every human thing Irving could teach me, and several he explicitly advised against. And you still... His voice cracked. Not dramatically. A hairline fracture in 800 years of careful speech. She watched the composure tighten around it like a hand closing over a wound. You still turn off when I walk in. The kitchen was silent. Birch was looking at the counter. Corwin was looking at his shoes. I can't help it, she said, very quietly. I know you can't help it. And I have spent 7 weeks trying to change the thing you can't help reacting to, and I cannot. His jaw worked. Ghost memory, the pulse that wasn't there. I cannot stop being still. I have tried. The stillness is not a choice. It is what 800 years of being a predator looks like, and it is what I am. And if what I am is the shape of your... He stopped himself. But she heard it. The unfinished sentence, the precise, controlled words, the exhaustion of a man who had tried everything and arrived at the wall he couldn't get past. I tried. What more do you want? She heard it. The echo, the pattern, the controlled man reaching his limit and telling her, in precise, measured words, that he had done his best and it wasn't enough, and the failure was structural. And underneath the echo, so quiet she almost missed it, she heard the difference. Her father had never tried. Her father had never tapped. Her father had never stood in a garden at dawn for 90 seconds to ask her what she was afraid of. Her father's sentence had been a closing door. Soren's was... But her body was already standing. Her thumbs were already pressed together. 800 years of composure on his side and 25 years of learned fear on hers, and the body won. I need to go. Theta, I need to go. She left, not in 47 seconds, in 8. Irving, in the corridor, said nothing. He opened his personal log and wrote, Day 49. I anticipated a worse timeline. I was wrong. The timeline is now. Chapter 5. The Green Door. She went to her flat in the city. The flat was small, modern, and aggressively normal. Mirrors that reflected everything they were supposed to. No ghoul, no clock with opinions, no rose garden she could describe to someone who'd never seen it in sunlight. This is fine, she thought. This is what normal looks like. Normal was unbearable. Irving texted. He texted in full sentences with correct grammar and a punctuation style that conveyed exhausted precision. The king has not left the study. He is not tapping. He is not blinking. He is sitting very still. I believe this is the opposite of progress. I am documenting it under reversals. She texted back. Is he feeding? He has not fed since Tuesday. This is inadvisable. In my professional opinion, it is self-destructive. In my personal opinion, it is exactly the kind of behavior I have come to expect from someone who attempted to scaffold his own house in 1796. Day 2. Aldous sharpened his quill for 40 minutes this morning. I believe this is his version of processing emotions. It is more productive than the king's version, which is sitting in a dark room not breathing. I should note that not breathing is normal for him. The sitting in the dark is also normal. The combination at this duration is not. Day 3, morning. The king asked me what the front door looks like in daylight. I told him I did not know. He said, she told me it was green. I had no response to this. This is the first time in 400 years I have had no response. I am treating it as a personal failure and adjusting my documentation accordingly. Day 3, 2 p.m. The storm is here. The south wall is moving. She called him. Irving answered on the first ring. In the background, she could hear wind, stone grinding, and Corwin shouting something about the damask cuttings. "How bad?" she said. "The crack has extended to the roofline. The scaffolding is holding, but the contractor says the mortar is failing along the original fault line. He needs authorization to emergency shore the interior wall from the outside." From the outside. In daylight. In daylight, yes. It is 2:17 p.m. The sun is behind cloud cover, but the UV is sufficient to prevent anyone inside from going out there. Yes. Where's Soren? In the study, at the window, watching his south wall come apart and unable to walk outside to touch it. She was in her car in 4 minutes. She drove an hour and a half in the rain with Irving texting updates in the same exhausted precision he brought to everything. The contractor has identified 3 failure points. He is requesting structural authority to proceed with emergency buttressing. I have told him the estate manager is en route. He asked who the estate manager was. I said, "The woman who will be telling you what to do shortly." He seemed relieved. She arrived at Ashcombe Hall at 4:11 p.m. The south wall was worse than she'd feared. The crack had propagated along the mortar line like a fracture in ice, running jagged from the second floor to the garden wall. The scaffolding was groaning. Rain was pouring through the gap and into the east wing. She was out of the car and into the garden in under a minute. The contractor, a man named Davies, who had been working listed buildings for 30 years and had never seen one try to come apart in real time, met her at the base of the scaffolding. "The mortar's gone along the whole fault," he said. "We can shore it from outside, but someone needs to be on the scaffolding to direct the bracing. The angles have to be exact or we risk shifting the load to the west wall." "I'll go up." "In this?" "I've inspected chimneys and worse. Where are the bracing points?" She climbed. The scaffolding was wet and the wind was pushing sheets of rain sideways across the south face of the building. She could see the crack up close now, the ancient mortar crumbling under her hands, 200 years of freeze-thaw cycles that nobody had been awake to notice, finally coming due all at once. From the second-floor window, 12 feet away, Soren was watching. She could see him through the glass, standing at the window in the shadow of the interior, as close to the daylight as he could get without burning. His hand was flat against the pane. His face was, she realized, the most unguarded she had ever seen it. Not composed, not managed, not even trying to be anything other than what he was. A man watching someone he cared about climb his disintegrating wall in a rainstorm and being unable to do a single thing about it. "Second brace goes here," she shouted to Davies, pointing to the junction where the crack met the window lintel. "Angle it 45 degrees off the vertical. Anchor into the original stone, not the mortar." "Got it." She worked for 2 hours. She directed the bracing, checked the angles, tested the load transfer by hand, crawled along the scaffolding to inspect the foundation where the crack terminated. At one point, the wind nearly took her off the platform, and she grabbed the scaffold pole and held on with both hands, and through the rain, she saw Soren move. A sharp, sudden motion toward the window, his hand going flat against the glass. And she thought, he can't open it. The sunlight would burn him. He's watching me almost fall, and he can't even open the window. She gave him a thumbs up, through the rain, from a scaffold. It was, she would later reflect, possibly the least romantic gesture in the history of vampire-human relations, and also the most honest one. At 6:12 p.m., the light faded enough. The front door opened. Soren came out. He crossed the garden in the dusk, moving with the smooth, inhuman speed he usually kept hidden, and he was at the base of the scaffolding before she'd finished climbing down. She was soaked, covered in old mortar dust that the rain had turned to paste. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her hands were raw from gripping wet metal for 2 hours. She looked, by any reasonable standard, like someone who had been in a fight with a building and won on points. "The wall's holding," she said. He looked at her. She was standing on the bottom rung of the scaffolding, which put her roughly at his eye level, and he was looking at her with 800 years of composure completely absent. Just gone, stripped away by 2 hours of watching her save his house from the wrong side of a window. "You came back," he said. "Your wall was falling down." "You came back before Irving texted about the wall." She paused, looked at him, rain running down both their faces, his cold, hers warm. "Yes," she said, "I did." He reached up and pushed the wet hair off her forehead. His fingers were cold, the deep, impossible cold of someone whose blood hadn't circulated in 8 centuries, and the contrast against her rain-warm skin was sharp and real, and she didn't flinch. She didn't pull back. She didn't press her thumbs together. "You're covered in my house," he said. "Your house started it." He kissed her on the bottom rung of a scaffold, in the rain, with mortar dust in her hair and his cold mouth against her warm one, and the taste of rain between them. It was not a candlelit kiss. It was not a ballroom kiss. It was the kind of kiss that happens when a man has spent 2 hours watching someone he loves do the thing he cannot do. And the restraint, 8 centuries of it, simply runs out. She kissed him back. Her hands were raw and her fingers were stiff, and she put them against his jaw, the cold line of it, the ghost memory tension at the muscle, and she held him there the way she'd held scaffolding poles all afternoon, with both hands, like she meant it. He pulled back. His eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them, amber gone to honey, gone to something without a name. "Your heart rate," he said. "What about it?" "It's elevated." "I just climbed a wall in a rainstorm." "It's not that kind of elevated." "No," she said. "It's not." Inside, the house smelled like rain and old stone and Birch's herbs. Theda stood in the kitchen, dripping on the flagstones, while Birch brought towels, and Corwin reported that the damask cuttings had survived, but 2 of his garden stakes had not. "The squirrels?" Theda asked. "Sheltering. Even they have limits." "I respect their tactical retreat." Irving appeared in the doorway with a change of dry clothes and an expression that, on a man with more emotional range, might have been relief. "The wall?" he asked. "Holding. The bracing needs monitoring overnight. I'll check it at dawn." "At dawn." "I'll be here at dawn, Irving." He looked at her, at Soren, who was standing in the kitchen doorway, not still, not fidgeting, just present, with mortar dust on his coat and rain in his hair, and an expression Irving had never seen before and would be documenting extensively. "Welcome back, Ms. Voss," Irving said. She stayed past sunset, past midnight, past the point where the handoff schedule mattered and the professional boundaries blurred, and the kitchen became just a kitchen, warm flagstones and herb-scented air, and 2 people sitting across from each other with cups of tea that one of them would never drink. "You're holding the cup wrong," she said. "There is a wrong way to hold a cup?" "You're holding it like evidence, like you're preserving it for analysis. Humans hold cups like this." She demonstrated, casual, one hand. Loosely, like it might not be the most important object in the room. It is, currently, the most important object in the room. "It's a cup of tea." "It is a cup of tea. You made me, with your hands, in your kitchen, while covered in my house." That is a very intense way to describe someone making tea. "I am a very intense person." "I've noticed." "You've also noticed my hand temperature, my blink rate, and my tapping rhythm over a period of 7 weeks. I would suggest that I am not the only intense person in this room." She laughed, the real laugh. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Yes?" "In the kitchen, before you, before the door, you said this stillness was what you are. And you were right. It is. It's part of what makes you a king, and part of what makes you a predator, and part of what makes everyone in this house feel like there's a center to it. And it's the thing that frightens you." "It was the thing that frightened me." But today I watched you stand at a window for 2 hours because you couldn't come outside, and your stillness wasn't control. It wasn't judgment. It was... She paused. You were stuck. You were scared. And you couldn't do anything about it. And that's not my father. My father's stillness was a choice. Yours, today, was a cage. He was quiet for a long time. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere in the east wing, water was dripping through the compromised wall, and Aldous was probably already writing a damage report in his most reproachful handwriting. I would have broken the window, he said. What? If you had fallen, I would have broken the window and come out and burned, and I would not have cared. You would have died. I would have caught you first. That's not... You can't just say things like that. I have been alive for 800 years, and I have never said anything I didn't mean. I am not going to start now. She looked at him across the kitchen table. The rain had stopped. The house was quiet, the particular quiet of a building with a vampire in it, where even the air seemed to hold itself still. When did you last feed? She asked. His eyes changed. A flicker, barely visible, amber shifting half a shade darker. That isn't relevant. Irving told me Tuesday. That's 5 days, Soren. I have gone longer. I don't doubt it, but you're going to answer my question, because I manage this household, and your blood supply is literally in my inventory system, and I reorganized it personally, and I will not have you undermining my logistics with stubbornness. He almost smiled. You are framing my starvation as an inventory issue. It is an inventory issue. You're the primary consumer, and you've been off-grid for 5 days. That's a variance I have to account for. You want to discuss my feeding as a supply chain matter. I want you to eat. How we frame it is your choice. She held out her wrist, across the table, palm up. He went still. Not the fidget stillness, not the practiced human stillness, the real kind, the predator kind, where every line of his body went taut and his eyes dropped to the inside of her wrist, and the air in the kitchen changed temperature. Theta. I'm not afraid. Your heart rate says otherwise. My heart rate says I'm offering my wrist to a vampire I have feelings about. That's not fear. That's a different thing entirely. He reached across the table, took her hand. His fingers were cold, the deep, bloodless cold of 5 days without feeding, and the contrast against her warm skin was sharp and real. He lifted her wrist to his mouth slowly, with the deliberate care of a man who understood what he was being given. It was brief, a pressure, a sting, a warmth that spread outward from the point of contact like ink dropped in still water. She felt opened, not exposed, just entirely visible. He pulled back before she wanted him to. A faint trace of red at the corner of his mouth. His eyes had gone deeper, amber into honey, honey into firelight. Still water, he said. His voice was rough. And something I don't have a word for. Is that good? It is the best thing I have tasted in 800 years. She put her hand on the table, palm up, open. He put his hand over hers, cold over warm. The oldest story, the truest one. You don't have to tap, she said. I know. You can be still, with me. I know. He paused. But you should know I would. She turned her hand over and laced her fingers through his, and his hand was cold, and hers was warm, and neither of them moved. And for the first time in 800 years, the stillness in the room was not his. It was theirs. In the morning, the sun hit the front door. Green, sage green, worn where centuries of hands had pushed it open. Theta walked out into the garden to check the bracing. The south wall was holding. The scaffolding was still standing. The jackdaws on the east chimney were circling in the early light, unbothered by the drama below. Corwin was assessing the rose damage with the intensity of a man surveying a battlefield. Casualties? she asked. 2 stakes, 1 trellis. The damask survived. The damask always survives. The damask is the hardest thing in this garden, including me. At sunset, the handoff. She was in the study, reviewing the structural engineer's emergency assessment, when Soren appeared in the doorway. He tapped. 3 fingers, still slightly robotic. He blinked, still slightly alarming. He shifted, still architecturally committed. She looked up at him, at the amber eyes, the composed face, the tall, still figure in the doorframe, and she smiled. Not the professional smile, not the conspiratorial warmth she calibrated for everyone else. The real one, the one she'd been keeping from him since the day she arrived. She gave it to him. And Soren Ashcombe, vampire king of the Ashcombe estate, 800 years old, who had frightened diplomats and armies and creatures older than this country, stood in the doorway of his own study and did not know what to do with his hands. Irving, passing in the corridor, added a final entry to his log. Day 53. She smiled at him. The real one. The king's response was, for the first time in my 400 years of service, not something I anticipated. He smiled back. It did not cause a diplomatic incident. I am cautiously revising everything.